I'm going to do a little voiceover on this video until the audio from the actual video kicks in. I wasn't talking here, but I want to kind of show you what I'm doing here. So the first thing I do is I go to put the reins over her head like I'm about to get on. And you can see she kind of freaks out here, and she usually does that. And I think partly what it is, she thinks I'm pointing to tell her to go somewhere, and I'm kind of pointing with both hands, and so it kind of confuses her. And then what you can see that I did there is when her face comes back to neutral and she focuses and stops running away, then I just back up and I don't force the issue and put the reins over her head. I back away. And then I go to try it again, and usually it works the second time. But if it kept on not working, I would keep trying that. Now here, the next thing I'm doing is I go to tighten the cinch. And a lot of times when I go to tighten the cinch, she'll move away and kind of pretend she's cinchy and whatnot. And she may be cinchy, but you can see that I do the same thing. As she's moving, I get pretty aggressive cinching her up. And when she stops moving, then I stop cinching her up. In fact, I go ahead and loosen it and let her breathe for a second, and then I go back to cinching it up. And she almost always stands perfectly fine the second time. Got another horse from the barn, Kessie. She was the same way. She liked to move around when I would go to cinch her up, and it didn't take her very long, maybe a couple weeks of doing that, and she doesn't move at all, like ever, when I cinch her up these days. So they definitely can get over that. You can see here I'm doing some lateral flexion, trying to ask for some vertical flexion there as well. It's kind of those, what I call my pre-flight checks that I want to do every time before I get on a horse. And then I go ahead and climb on. Now you can see as I get on here, she does not go walking off. She doesn't show any signs of anxiety. She just stands nice and calm, and in a second she's going to lick and chew. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the audio from the recording here. All right, Lauren. So wanted to do a little bit of an update on Maple for you. Wanted to show you a couple of techniques that I've been working on with her, and also kind of just show you where she's at in the riding. So you have a little bit to kind of base it on when you start riding her, kind of see if she's where I left off. So today is Sunday. Yeah, and you're taking her home Wednesday. So you're taking her home in about 4 days. It's about to get super cold, so honestly, today may be the last time I get to ride her. Rode her yesterday, had a pretty good ride. So, when I'm working on riding any horse, then, if I'm riding a horse, I'm training it. I think of it that way. You're never just riding the horse for fun. You're always training, because in the horse's mind, he doesn't know if you're riding it for fun or riding it for training that day, right? So if I'm on a horse and I'm training a horse, I want to think about the head and neck, the shoulders, and the hips, right? 3 main body parts that we have to have control of. And you want to get control of them in that order, because you can't really control the hips if you don't have control of the head and neck, and then the shoulders, and so on and so forth. So she's at the point where I have pretty good control of her head and neck, almost always. Shoulders usually, and hips sometimes. So we're kind of at that phase. For her to be able to lope well and be able to expect her to go from a nice easy trot into a nice lope, we have to have control of all 3. And that's why I haven't really loped on her yet, is I don't think she's ready, but specifically she's not ready because I don't have control of all 3 of those body parts perfectly at the trot. All right, so first thing, and I literally just jumped on her today. I haven't done anything with her yet from the saddle. I did a little bit of groundwork, not much. First thing, I'm going to check my head and neck. Do I have control of them? So I'm going to do a little bit of lateral flexion. Not too bad. It wasn't a lot of vertical there. It was more lateral. For now, I'm okay with that. I'd like it to be a little more vertical, just to note. Now, one thing I'm going to show you later on is when she's going forward and I ask her to stop and back up, her first reaction is to stiffen up her neck and hollow out her back, and you can feel her back sink down and her neck come up, and she gets real bracy. Now she'll back up, but she's doing it super bracy. So what I do, and what I want you to do when you start riding her, teach your kids to do this, is when you're backing her up, wait for her to go ahead and bend at the pole, bend at the neck, give her face. You'll feel her back lift, and then you can release and let her stop backing. So don't stop the backup cue until she gives like that, because we don't want her to learn to brace up that neck. If she does, that could lead to her flipping over backwards eventually. Especially like with your kids, if they don't really know, if they get a little scared and they just pull harder and they don't know the feel of how to pull and where to pull, and when to let go a little bit because you're about to go over backwards, she could flip over. I actually trained a horse that the reason I had it in for training was it had flipped over with I think she's about 13-year-old girl, and hurt her pretty bad. I mean, she ended up being okay, but horse flipping over backwards on you is not a good time. But it does happen. And that horse, after that incident, is when I got it in for training. And it was very much that way. You pick up on the reins and it would brace up its neck, hollow out its back, and the next thing it's going to do is go on over backwards. So really important thing to fix there. Okay, so that's the head and neck. The shoulders, I'm going to go ahead and walk her around a little bit before I start working on shoulders. I just kind of want to warm her up a little bit. But the shoulders, we've got to have good control over, and then the hips as well. I'll show you both of those, but I just kind of want to walk her around here. Now, I'm not asking her to steer to the right here. She's doing that on her own. I'm not going to tell her not to just yet. I'm just going to let her walk. But I'm going to kind of note that, and that might be something we work on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and steer her left and right a couple times and make sure that that's working. Okay, I picked up on that rein and we lost all our forward momentum right there, right? And she gets really pissy. So I'm going to wait till she's soft and walking forward. So soft to the right rein and walking forward. There we go. A little bit better. And then she got stiff again. Pick it up again. So I wanted to show you shoulder and hip control, but if I don't even have good face control and have her have the ability, that was better, to walk forward softly and give her face softly, I'm not even going to try to work on shoulder and hip control. Yesterday when I rode her, face and everything was working pretty good. I was able to work on shoulders and work on hips, but every day you have to ride the horse that you have. And this is what I've got right now, is her not really giving the face very well. So right there, I'm going to pick up on the left side, keep driving her forward. Now, one thing I want to kind of teach right here, right there, I want you to even rewind that right there and watch her ear. When her ear is off of me, I'm going to get it back. It's just like getting her focus on the ground. She has a tendency not to pay attention to the person on her back and get locked in on other things and get distracted, just like she does on the ground, right? It all connects. So if her ears are off of me and I pick up on this rein, right there, you see that left ear go out that way? And there, her ear kind of came back to me. I let go of the rein because I got that ear back, but then her forward motion stopped, so I kind of kept kicking her and making her go forward. But this is something y'all can also do when you're riding her. Super simple. Just like here, I'm going to pick up on the right rein. The ear went off of me. She's blocking out that right rein. There, the ear came back, and I let go. So again, make the wrong thing hard, the right thing easy. The right thing would be for her to look into that direction of travel and bring her ear and her mind with it. The wrong thing would be I pull on this rein and her mind and everything runs out that way and runs away from the rein. That's not going to make for a nice balanced horse, right? So the wrong thing, ear turns away. I'm just going to hold that rein and make her keep turning a circle until the ear and the mind comes back to me, and then I release. You can notice as we're riding around right now, like right there, her ears went over there a little bit because she's always a little nervous about that indoor arena. But it's okay if her ears go over there, but they're coming back to me, right? Here, her ears are back on me. So she keeps at least checking in with me, if not maintaining focus on me, right? There, her ears are stuck. There, she checked back in with me right there. Excellent. If you or your kids are riding her, or any horse, and you notice that their ears are not checking in with you every so often, you got a problem. You're not in the driver's seat anymore. You're on a self-driving car, and you're sitting in the back seat. And wherever that car wants to go, you're going to go with it. You got to have those ears either focused on you or at least checking in with you every so often. All right, this is quite a bit better. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little shoulder control for you. So 2 ways to do shoulder control. You can have them bent in the same direction that you're going to move the shoulders. So in that instance, her head would be bent to, let's say, to the left. And I also bring her shoulders to the left. So now I'm just basically, that's neck craning essentially, right? Or we can have their face counter bent and really driving the shoulders. And that's a lot harder for a horse to do. It's not as natural of a motion, but it's super, super important to teach them because it frees up their shoulders and makes them actually move their shoulders over and listen to you. And it just does a lot of really good things for the horse. So first I'm going to do some normal bent, basically neck reining. So she's wanting to go in a left-hand turn. So I'm just going to bring this rein across. And there. Got those shoulders to step over. Put her right back into a forward. Coming up to this fence, I'm going to bring the rein across her neck. Shoulders stepped over. Right back into the forward. Now she went into that trot without me asking her to. So I'm just going to bend her all the way to a stop. And then ask her to go right back into it. So why did I bend her to a stop right there? Well, let's go back to the trot. Why did she trot? Well, I think she trotted because she had some anxiety. She had some anxiety built up because I had her turn and I kicked her around with that right foot a little bit, and she started moving her feet and she got a little bit frantic, and she's like, oh my gosh, I gotta do something about this anxiety that I have building up, right? Well, how do horses deal with anxiety in the wild? They run, they flee, right? You have a mountain lion or a bobcat or, whatever, a pack of wolves attacking a horse. That horse's first best mechanism of defense is to run, right? So in his mind, or in her mind, she thought, oh, something is a little bit scary. I have some anxiety. I just need to move my feet and get away from it. Now, if I had pulled on both reins right there and said, just stop, don't move your feet, or even just said, come back to the walk, what I basically would have been doing is, like, let's say I was a therapist and you came to me with all your problems, right? You lay your whole life out in front of me and you're like, this is all my problems. And I said, okay, good. I'm glad you told me all that. Now shut up, go back to your normal life and deal with it. I want you to stuff it all back inside. I don't want to ever hear about it again, right? It would be a pretty crappy therapist, right? I'm trying to be a therapist for this horse. If she's expressing the need to move her feet more because of anxiety, I'm not going to tell her not to move her feet. But what I am going to tell her is, hey, you got to move your feet in a direction that I tell you to. And oh, by the way, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. You're going to have to work a little bit harder, i.e. traveling in a small circle. And then that's going to bleed off that energy. And she's going to go, well, this was stupid. All I got out of having that anxiety was having to go in a tiny circle. And then that starts to teach her not to get into that anxiety phase. So that's why I bent her around to a stop, and then we went right back to work. All right. Ask her to walk off. Now she's turning to the right, to the left on her own. So I'm going to go ahead and steer her to the right. Now I'm laying this left rein across her neck. There, I felt like her shoulders actually stepped over right there. You can see that time it didn't build any anxiety. She didn't go off in the trot. Excellent. I should be able to lay the rein on her neck just like that, and then add leg and kick her through that turn if needed, without her developing anxiety. Now she's starting to lean off to the right, so I'm going to bring her around to the left, keep that forward motion. Beautiful. Now that interaction right there is exactly what caused her to trot the last time I did it. That time it didn't cause any anxiety or trotting. That's what I want. Okay, now I'm going to start doing some shoulder control with a counter bend. All right. So she just started to kind of steer off to the left. I might have steered her back to the right, but instead of steering her back to the right and allowing her face to turn into the direction of turn, this time I'm going to hold a little bit of left direct rein, which is going to hold a little bit of left hand bend in her face, but I'm also going to put some left indirect rein, which is going to tell her shoulder to move to the right. If that left indirect rein doesn't move her shoulder on its own, I'm going to back it up with my foot. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of left bend with a direct rein. Lay that rein across her neck, just like we did on the ground, if you remember the last lesson we did. And right about, that was all right. Wasn't great, but for starters, I'll take it. Left bend, left indirect rein, and shoulders move to the right. I want a little bit better here. There, that was actually pretty good. Now I'm going to finish it off with there. I want to finish that off with having her head get soft there. I don't want her to come through that, to move the shoulder over with her head and neck quite so stiff. All right. So let's see. I think I'm going to do another left indirect rein, left direct rein. Stand that shoulder up. There, that was better. Ask again. That was a little bit better. Now I'm just going to bring her through to the right. Okay, now here's a good, I'm going to pause for a second. Let's pretend I hadn't stopped here. She was diving in on the circle just like she did at the beginning, right? I said I was not going to fix it yet, but I was going to note it for later. Now it's later. She's diving in on this circle. She ought to be out basically along the rail, right? But she's not. She's way in here. And see how she's even pointed over there? She's not even pointed to get back to the rail. So what I'd like to be able to do now is shift that shoulder out to the rail, okay? But I want to keep her head bent to the inside of the circle, because ultimately I want her going around the circle on a C shape bent to the inside, but I want the shoulder to be able to drive to the outside of the circle. So I'm going to go ahead and see if it works. Now, if it doesn't work, what I'm going to do is take her in a full counter bent circle, 360 degree counter bent circle, until she's facing up and I feel like that shoulder is actually getting off of the rein in my foot, and then I'll allow her just to continue in the circle. All right, so let's see if it works. Ask her to go forward a little bit here. I felt that shoulder go in already right there. Ooh, that was actually pretty good. There's the face. I actually liked that. So I'm not going to make her go into the 360 counter bent circle. I'm just going to allow her to continue to walk. Now right here, she dove into the inside, right? So I'm going to pick up that right direct rein, right indirect rein, drive the shoulder to the outside. There, she got really stiff. So I'm going to keep working at this. Now we need to go into the 360 degree circle, right? Because everything kind of broke down right there. There it is. Keep going around. There. There. That one was pretty good. If she had done that initially, she wouldn't have had to do all that work of going in the 360 degree circle. And she'll figure that out eventually. There. I did that because she was cutting in on the circle. Big sigh. She just did a big blowout kind of thing. That's what they tend to do once you actually get control of their body parts and you're directing where they go instead of having them direct where they go. They actually start to relax a lot. There. Much better. All right, I'm going to go ahead and trot her off here. All right, so what happened right there? When I started to trot her off, hang on, I can't talk and train at the same time sometimes. I got to think about what I'm doing. There. I don't know if you can see from the outside the way her balance is right here, but she's not yielding that shoulder at all. See how the hip is going way more than the shoulder is? She's not actually lifting her shoulder and leading with the shoulder. There. It's going to take a lot of work, more work than I'm going to be able to put in the next 4 days to get that shoulder to where it's actually leading. Right now, her hip is what's leading that, and you can tell that when I let her go there. She has no ability to keep her face bent here. Get it little bit better, right there. If I would need her face to be able to be there and have her shoulder drive out that way. But right now what's happening is it's all happening in her hips. So I'm not going to get too deep into that because I'm not going to be able to fix that in the next 4 days anyway. But, you know, for me, a horse has to be able to do that in order to be really to be useful for anything, whether it's be a kid's horse or to be a show horse or, you know. All right, I'm going to ask for that again. A little bit of right direct rein. And now I'm going to ask her shoulders to step up and off that. That was okay. But see how her hip is what ended right there? Look, see how, I don't know if you can, I can't even describe it. You just kind of got to see her balance. Her shoulder's not driving up. And maybe I should jump on one of my other horses and kind of demonstrate what this should look like. That was better. That was actually pretty good right there. And there she stayed soft in her face. It's probably off the camera when she did that good one. See if I can get a video from the back of this. Okay, so right direct rein. She's backing up instead of going forward. Right there, you see how that hip is flying out right there? That's not what should be happening at all. And what this may be from is a lot of people, and I made this mistake when I was first starting to break in colts too, a lot of people do a lot of bending this way and driving their hip that way. It's a horrible thing to do. I do it maybe a handful of times when you very, very first start a horse, like the very first couple days. After that, you don't ever want to do that because what you're doing is you're disengaging their hind end. I don't even want to do it once to demonstrate. But if I pull her head this way and push her hips that way, her back foot is going to step up and over and it's going to disengage all this stuff back here. Now, that's great to just turn a horse off, basically, to keep it from bucking or something. And that's why I do a little of that the first day to make sure they're loose through here. You want that. But it's literally called disengaging the hind end. Everything I'm going to do with this horse, I want their hind end engaged, right? So I don't want to do a bunch of that. But if whoever broke her did a lot of disengaging and bending her in circles like that, then now she thinks whenever I pick up on this rein here, she just automatically takes weight off the hind end and spins it that way. I don't know if that's why, but it is possible. So a lot of people make that mistake training horses. All right, I'm going to go back to it. So right direct rein, right indirect rein. She's not getting off that. There. Ooh, now that was pretty good. And we finished by getting her face off. Hopefully the camera could see that. Now I want you to notice the position of her head right now. When you start to get the body parts working, meaning her back and her core muscles are carrying her weight, her shoulders are elevated, the head and neck naturally start to go down. If you're riding your horse on a trail ride or something else and your horse's head is not hanging down like this, then it means your horse's body is not quite working correctly. And I'm not saying your horse has to always have its head on the ground. It is not always going to be like that. But this is an indication that I have finally got some parts of her body working correctly. Her whole body's not working correctly yet. But these horses are playing over there. You can probably hear it in the background. Okay, now the next thing I wanted to talk about, normally, like I said, if I was training a horse long term, I would spend a lot more time on shoulders. But because I only have her a little bit and I want to give you guys kind of a comprehensive view, I'm going to start showing you some hind end work. So a lot of times I start this on the fence. In fact, I'll go ahead and do that. I'll just go ahead and take her up to the fence here. So I'm going to use this junction in the fence right where her nose is at, right here, as pretend that's a pivot point. Pretend there's a hinge attached to her nose that's attached to that break in the fence right there. I want her nose to stay attached to that hinge. I want her body to swing around. Like if her body was a panel right now, it was attached right there, I could just swing it in a 180 degree turn. The way I'm going to do that is I want her hind end to move, right? I don't really want her front end to move very much. I want her hind end to do most of the moving. So in this case, I'm going to take my right leg, place it back, and press. Now, if she does anything except move her hind end that way, I'm going to use all my other tools to fix it or hold it in. This is why you have to have face control and shoulder control first before you ever start working on hip control. Because if I ask those hips to move and she moves shoulders or does something crazy with her face or something else instead, and I can't easily fix it, I'm going to have to give up on training the hips and go fix whatever this is. And then I've just released my cue of her hips, and then she thinks, well, I don't actually have to do anything with my hips. I can just mess up all this other stuff, right? So that's why you have to train front to back. All right, right leg back on her side. I'm kicking with my right leg a little bit. She's thinking. Now that was shoulders that went first, so I added a little bit of left indirect rein, a little bit of left foot. Then she went forward, and there she actually stepped around with her hind end. Good. So she tried two distinct incorrect actions before she took the correct action. And all I did was I left this cue on, but I used other cues to stop the incorrect action, but kept asking until she gave me the correct action. Okay? That sequence is extremely important. I'm going to ask her again. So right leg back, asking her hip to move, and her hip moved. Everything about that was pretty good, except I didn't like that she threw her head to the right quite so much, but you know, that's getting picky, and we're not at a picky stage yet. Okay, now we're over on this side. If this was a gate, I could have side passed up to the gate, could handle it, whatever. Now I'm going to do the same thing, 180 degrees back that way. So left leg back, pressing on her side. She's thinking about moving her shoulder instead. I'm going to keep at there's shoulder. I'm going to block it, but keep asking her hips. And there's her hips. That was one good step right there. The reason I like to do this into the fence first is it helps me block some of that forward. I don't want to be doing this first time out in the middle of the pasture or the arena or something, or even in the middle of the pen, where I'm having to really hold her back with the reins, because then I'm just overusing the reins. I'd rather teach her this with a little bit of an aid of the fence to keep her from going forward. Okay, so I'm going to, once again, left leg back. Now she's moving her shoulders instead, and she's trying to go forward. Left leg back, and there's that hip movement that I wanted. Good. And for reference, this is not the first day I've done this. I've probably done this 3 days, I think. And this is the best hip movement I've gotten from her since I started training her on this. That was pretty good. As for one more step. All right. That was not too bad right there. I like that. All right. So now I'm just going to put her back into this walk. Now I've done some shoulder control and I've done some hip control. Shoulder control is not as good as I'd like it to be. Hip control was actually better than it has been. What I want to do now is start to combine, well, not even combine the two. I want to start to do hips driven to the center of the circle, all right? This is going to exaggerate that C shape. You can see one of the kind of the issues she's having staying out on the rail is her hip is flying out to the outside and her shoulders are falling to the inside. I'm going to do the exact opposite. I want her hip to drive up to the inside and her shoulders to drive out to the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and just place my right leg back, ask her to drive her hips to the inside of this circle. That was shoulder, not hip. This is the exact, there. Now I'm going to ask her to go forward again. This is the exact same thing I was doing on the fence. The only difference is now we're walking forward and we don't have the fence in front of us to do this, to stop her forward motion. But she's not trying to run away from me anyway, so it's fine. Okay, right leg back. She's driving her hip, she was diving her shoulder in. Asking that hip to move. There, the hip moved. And now I'm just going to ask her to drive forward. You want to think diagonal. I don't know if I talked to you guys about this. I made a video about this the other day. So different people talk about diagonals different ways. The way I'm using it in this context is draw a diagonal line from your right foot back on their hindquarters. So let's call it her right hind foot to the left side of the bit. That's where you want that energy going. I'm going to use my right leg to drive energy. Now her hind end there. So what her hind end was doing there for a second was pressing against my right foot, which is out of the diagonal, right? I want that hind end pressing right up here through the diagonal, all right? All right, I'm gonna trot her just a little bit. My next lesson showed up, so I need to end this video pretty quick, but I think I got a lot of good content for you guys in here. Good, nice big shake off. See how her ears are on me even in this trot? All right, one more thing I did want to show you. I was talking about it earlier, how her backup right there, her backup gets really stiff and then it finally loosened up right there. So she started to get too fast in the trot right there. She was kind of driving through it and falling her shoulder in. And so I went ahead and asked her to back up and I got to demonstrate that really stiffness in her neck when she stops. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it again here just so the camera can see it really good. There's the stiffness. Stiffer, 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 and there she loosened up. Okay, I may do a whole video on that, or I'm at least going to show that to you guys when you pick her up, because I think that's probably the most important thing in terms of your safety and your kids' safety on her is going to be every time you stop and back her, she needs to do that right there and get soft. That's not soft, that's stiff. That's stiff. That's a little bit softer. It needs to get better, but I'm out of time. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there on her. But if you guys have any questions, let me know.